Like most vinyl collectors, I am guilty of buying albums just because I think they're going to sound great on vinyl. AAA reissue, mastered by Kevin Gray, pressed at RTI, all these words that indicate that the album is going to sound great, and you generally are going to get a pretty good product when words like that are associated with it. However, I'm still a music lover first, and I often find myself buying albums just because the music's good and I have no expectation of how the album is actually going to sound on vinyl and if it's going to be any better than just streaming it. However, through my years of collecting, I found a number of albums that actually sound really, really incredible, and today I wanted to show off 10 albums that I think sound surprisingly excellent. Let's go. Or should I say, let go. I'm going to start off with a bang. The reigning queen of Canada, Avril Lavigne, with her debut studio album, Let Go. This actually wasn't put out on vinyl until 2017 when Music on Vinyl reissued it. I bought this with no expectation that it would be anything other than a fun, bit of nostalgia. And what I was rewarded with was an album that actually sounded incredible. Things like the song Complicated that I've heard on the radio a billion times in my life. There's like definition and brightness to the acoustic guitars. The vocals are clear, crisp. Everything's very full, very big sounding, just like spectacular. And for some strange reason, I had avoided buying music on vinyl presses forever because they use digital sourcing, even though that everything I'd heard about them was that their record sounded great. And this album alone has made me go and explore music on vinyl further, and everything they've done that I have is excellent, and it was thanks to this Avril Lavigne album that sounds surprisingly awesome. Next, I'm going to go with another Canadian artist, with Andy Schuff with The Party. So Andy Schuff is a Regina, Saskatchewan born singer-songwriter, started out as more folk singer-songwriter, acoustic guitar, and his beautiful voice. Throughout his career, he started to add more arrangements, make his songs kind of bigger sounding, and on this album he kind of really nailed it. And even for an artist from a small region, this album made a ton of like big publications, best of albums list. Really, really incredible, very original sounding music that really appeals to people who are into maybe older sounds but with more modern flair. Think like Grizzly Bear, that kind of like alternative indie music. No expectations when I bought this. I'd listened to it many times. I knew that I loved the music on it. This was recorded in Regina, Saskatchewan at a studio that it was a very big room. They had a lot of like vintage instruments, vintage amps, that kind of thing. It was mastered at Salt Mastering, which is in the Dead Wax. No idea where the pressing was done. The record came out of the sleeve scratched to hell, huge like 2-inch like scuff across it. I assumed it was going to sound like garbage, but no, incredibly warm, like that in your like living room singer-songwriter vibe. Everything was very bright, very analog sounding. I can't say enough about this pressing, and with no expectations, no real information available on it, but wow, what a great press. Highly recommended. Next, I'm going to go with Thundercats Drunk. So this is one of my favorite albums ever. When this was released, I wanted to get on vinyl so bad, but it only came in this stupid 10-inch, 45 RPM cut box set. I thought that eventually maybe it would come out as a single LP, 33 RPM. The album is under an hour long. Never happened. So this came back into stock about a year ago. I picked it up immediately. I gotta say, packaging on this, awesome, but the decision to do it as 45 RPM paid serious dividends. The album itself is jazz fusion, lots of mixes of like electronic music, hip hop, rock music, some AOR, maybe like a little yacht rock in there even. But the sound of this is so stunning, so spectacular, very crisp. For example, there's a song Show You the Way that actually has Michael McDonald and Kenny Loggins on it. And that song kind of personifies the way that the album sounds. It like nails this like late 70s, early 80s like audiophile sound that bands like like Steely Dan or the Doobie Brothers did so well. And I mean, this is an amazing record. The song Them Changes, which samples the Isley Brothers, it's all over like TikTok. I've heard it a million times before, but yeah, such a good album. Huge sounding, so clean. Love this one. Very happy that this is the way that they presented it, even though I kind of wish it was just one LP so I didn't have to stand up every 7 minutes to change the record. Staying within the Avril Lavigne cinematic universe, her former husband's band Nickelback with Silver Side Up. So an album that if you're like me and grew up in Western Canada, This album is injected into your blood since you were like a child. I've heard this a billion times. I picked this up in Japan for $25. This is a first Dutch pressing. Thought that this would just be something that if I had like my friends over and we were drinking beers, we'd put on for a laugh. I put this on and I was like, wait a minute, is this an audiophile pressing? Keep in mind, this was released in 2001, peak of the loudness wars. This is like an album that's very guitar driven, lots of distortion. I expected this thing just to be clipped to all hell, so much just like compression. It sounds so full. There's nothing holding it back. Chad's vocals are big. The guitars are big. There's lots of bottom end. It's so weird, but this sounds so good. I think this one's actually gone up in price a bit, so I'm sorry that if you might not get to hear how good Nickelback can sound on vinyl, but yeah, very weird bit of a surprise for me. Speaking of surprises, another Canadian band. If you're not Canadian, this might come as a surprise to you because this band, I know people kind of see them as a bit of a meme. They know some of their songs that were kind of a little bit sillier, but the band is the Barenaked Ladies with their 2000 album Maroon, which is actually the follow-up to Stunt that had the song It's Been 1 Week, look, that song. But if you're Canadian and you've dug into this band's discography, they're fantastic musicians, amazing songwriters, and this is like low-key one of the best like power pop alternative rock albums of the last 30 years. It's an amazing, amazing record. I put it on again thinking nothing of how it would sound. Turns out that the album was produced by Don Was, it was mastered at Bernie Grundman Mastering, and the vinyl mastering was done at Sterling. This sounds full audiophile, an album that I thought might be a little bit sillier. This is full-on audiophile sounding. It sounds like an all-analog pressing. I doubt it is, though, but everything's very full, very rich, very warm, very well produced. I can't believe how well this is mastered. I listen to this all the time. It's just so damn good. If you're a big fan of like 2000s or like late 90s alternative music, this is one of the best sounding albums that you'll be able to get from kind of any artist of that era. So highly, highly recommended. Barenaked Ladies Maroon. Next, I'm going to go with a couple of hip-hop records. Generally, I've avoided buying hip-hop records on vinyl because they honestly most of the time just do not sound good. Outside of classics and some of my favorites, I generally pick them up if they're a really good price, and these two happen to be really good prices, and the albums ended up sounding great as well. So the first one I'm going to go with is the Beastie Boys with Paul's Boutique. This has been pressed a bunch of different times. This is the Capitol Records 75th anniversary pressing. I think I bought this at Winners for $15. No expectation of sound. I knew that I liked the music on it. The packaging's pretty ridiculous too. It's this stupid quad fold, whatever. I don't know. Anyway, but it's a single record, 33 RPM, almost an hour long, and they crammed all of it onto one disc. And even by doing that, this doesn't sound limited at all. It is very, very bassy. The low end sounds great. The vocals are great. The samples are very crisp, very clear. This is a great sounding record. I probably, at the time of buying this really changed my perspective of, oh, hip hop music can actually sound really good. And since then, I've managed to pick up a few more. But I'm always looking for more. So if you know any hip hop records that actually sound good and it's worth buying them on vinyl, let me know. Another one that was a bit of a shock. This is GZA's Liquid Swords. This is the Respect the Classics version that has this hype sticker on it. This is pressed at RTI, arguably the best pressing plant in the world, and this version is stunning. The vocals are so in your face, so clear. It's like that, you know, that like what you get from like an acoustic album that's like a AAA pressing where like the singer's like in front of you singing. It sounds that good. I have no idea why other hip-hop records aren't able to sound this good. It's really, really amazing and something that I would definitely recommend if you like this album, searching out this pressing because it sounds that good. Next, I'm going to go with Metallica's Hardwired to Self-Destruct. So this was a random sale on Amazon one day. I think I paid 11 Canadian dollars for this record for a double LP, stupid cheap. I was going to see them later that year, so I thought, hey, what the heck, I'll pick this up. Maybe listen to it a couple weeks before the show to get myself hyped up. I dropped the needle on this when I got it. I thought that I'd forgot to turn my receiver on because the vinyl was so quiet that I actually didn't hear the needle hitting it, and then a few seconds later I heard the drums starting. Oh, okay, like, yeah, the music started. But this was done by Chris Bellman cut this. It was pressed at Palace. and holy crap, it just sounds so different than anything I expected. I expected, Metallica to be very heavy, very loud, very abrasive, but what I was surprised to find is that it's very clean, very well-rounded sounding, very, very nice instrument separation, lots of soundstage. It almost sounds like a mobile fidelity type mastering of, an album that they did a good job on, and as a freaking Metallica record. Yeah, very, very good sounding. Don't really get how it's so good sounding, but hey, it was a great deal. Actually a pretty good album too. A lot of people, especially Metallica fans, would probably maybe expect this to sound a lot different, but if you go in with an open mind, really, really good sounding, very interesting sounding record. Not the most natural segue to go from a Metallica record to this, but I'm going to go with Taylor Swift's Red, the Taylor's version. So this was one of the albums that contributed to the great vinyl backup of 2021, along with Adele's 30 primarily. But one of the reasons why this was so controversial is that this was pressed as a 4 LP, 45 RPM box set. Why was that done this way instead of 2 LPs at 33 RPM? I can only guess it was to make twice as much money from being able to sell a 4 LP set. But as it turns out, if you are an audiophile who is willing to get over the fact that you're listening to a Taylor Swift record, this thing is incredible sounding. It's also really interesting because this is a very diverse album sound-wise. It bounces between country, rock, electronic, pop music. So there's acoustic guitars, electric guitars, there's drum machines, there's lots of synthesizers, and everything is handled very well. Very full, very rich sounding. Her vocals sound incredible. All the instruments are done really well. This is an album that's done with, of course, a big budget, so it only makes sense that they were able to get such great sound out of it, but there's no reason why other pop albums can't sound this good. And I think I was reading on Discogs, someone said, this album has no business sounding this good. So if you're an audiophile willing to go out of your comfort zone a little bit, pick this one up. It's actually awesome. And my last choice for an album that I bought not expecting to sound great and actually sounded incredible is Jack White's Blunderbuss. So this was Jack White's debut studio album, came out in 2012. I remember how excited I was for this to be released, and I just never connected with this album. A few great tracks, Missing Pieces, 16 Saltines, Love Interruption, all awesome, but I often found myself losing interest halfway through this album. I thought that there were some missteps. Some of the songs weren't as good as they could have been. But since this was released, I have seen Jack on every one of his album tours since then, so I ended up listening to this in advance of those shows. So I've got to know the album pretty well. Still don't love it, but I do tolerate it. This came back into print about 8 months ago. It popped up at a local store. It was like 23 Canadian dollars, which for a new record, very, very cheap. It's also in this like awesome Stoughton tip-on jacket, thick vinyl. Figure what the heck, I'm gonna go for it. I do like the album. I'm probably gonna buy it eventually. Might as well grab it. To my surprise, from the first time I listened to it, I not only found myself enjoying it, but loving this album. And over the last 8 months, this has been one of my most listened to records. It is amazing. I'm learning this album all new. There's so many things that I missed from listening to it digitally. It's obvious that this was produced to be listened to on vinyl, not to be listened to on, headphones through my phone. So rich, such a great sounding analog type record. There's lots of acoustic instruments, there's slide guitars, there's piano, there's acoustic guitars. Everything is so rich and so warm. It's very, very well done. Had to put this on the list because this pressing alone made me like an album that I've been trying to like for 10 years. So had to include it for that reason. So that is my list. If there are any albums that you found that really surprised you or shocked you with how good they sounded, let me know. I'm always looking to find new things. I'm always looking to explore particularly more modern music that is actually done really well. It is all about the music to me, but hey, if the pressing is great and it sounds even better on vinyl, that's great as well too. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Take care.